We might get started. So thank you for coming to my webinar. As you can see, it's called Defining Your Personal Brand. So I'm going to be talking a bit about that today. So first of all, my name is Emma Smith and I'm the owner of Lost Social Limited, which is a marketing and communications agency. And I work with businesses in a variety of different ways. So one of the things that I help people do is define their brand strategy and their approach to content marketing. And that can either be for a completely new business or a business that's already running, but wants a bit more of a strategy behind their branding. And then thinking about how they actually create content and engage with their customers and clients. Another thing I do is build websites, mainly on Squarespace, which is very much like the one I built for the Office Management Group. So hopefully you've taken a look at that. I also consult on communications, and this is a newer area for me, but I can work with businesses both on their internal and their external communications and produce bespoke training to ensure that there's a better approach to communications within that business. I've recently done a bit of work for a business in the education sector with over 180 staff, and it was all about how they can best communicate with each other because they work across multiple locations, and then streamline their internal comms as well as then how they produce external communications and publicise their work. And also I'm a social media manager and strategist. So I help businesses come up with engaging and creative ways to attract followers and engage with their followers. And I can take the pressure off by managing your social media marketing for you. But today I'm going to be talking about our personal brand. And I'm going to explore what a personal brand is and how to craft and define it so that it serves your needs. So first off, if I can move my cursor. What is a personal brand? So it's basically how you promote yourself, and it takes into account various different things. So one being your personality, and that's really, really important here. Your experience, your background, your skills, and then your expertise, aspirations, where you want to be and your future goals. And how you put this together will depend on how you want to be seen. And that's really what's important here, is thinking about how you want to be perceived. Who are you trying to communicate with? Who's your sort of end goal? Who do you want to attract? And it should ultimately align to your personal values and your tone of voice and how you do behave in real life. So first of all, there's 5 main steps really here, which I'm going to talk to you about in a bit more detail, and hopefully they won't be too intimidating, and you'll be able to kind of think quite freely about how this might be relevant for you. So the first thing you want to do is define who you are. And obviously we're all different, we're all wonderfully different, and we've all got very different complementary skills. So define the parts of you that you want to communicate. So are you sparkly and bold? Is sparky and bold? Are you quite outspoken? Have you got lots of different opinions and are you quite confident about communicating them? Are you reserved but very resourceful, which is obviously another very good skill to have that complements that first sort of personality. So think about whether you would want to sell yourself and how difficult that might be if you're more of a reserved person, but why people might want to see those benefits. Or are you fast-paced and efficient? Do you get things done really quickly? Do you kind of not mess around and you're very efficient? So again, there's obviously a lot of different skills in that area. So we are all very different. These are all very complementary skills. And when you start thinking about your positives, make sure you draw out the things that are going to set you apart from the competition. So what is going to make somebody choose working with you or choose aligning themselves to you over someone else? If you're looking for a job, what makes you a better candidate? So if you're looking for a new role, you might want to think about sort of zhuzhing up your personal brand to make yourself more attractive and appealing. If you asked your peers and your colleagues, what would they say are your key attributes and the things that really make you different? And actually that's a really good exercise, because sometimes it can be quite difficult to pinpoint our own positives. Like, what are the things we're really good at? It's quite difficult to blow your own trumpet. So sometimes it's worth asking your peers, your colleagues, your friends, even your partner or your family. Other people tend to be a lot quicker to name our strengths than we are personally. And then once you've got an idea of all these strengths, really make sure you choose real skills that reflect your personality. So if you if you're not an analytical person, if you're more creative, but you can kind of do the job, don't choose that as one of your core kind of things, because that will let you down, and you want it to be really authentic. So then once you've kind of thought about that, it might be worth picking out 3 or 4 that kind of represent you. So this could be anything from being a great communicator, a strong salesperson, efficient, organised, forward-thinking, a sort of thought leader, or even a great presenter, because again, that's a fantastic skill to have. So there's lots of different things that you can sort of pinpoint to you, think about the most effective. And then the next step is kind of a progression from that, and it's gathering information around your values. So really thinking about what your core values are, what do you hold dear, and what do you want to project onto other people, and how do you want to come across? So choosing values is a really crucial step, because this adds depth to your personal brand. And values can be anything. They can be being a good friend, a loyal friend. Loyalty is a great one. It could be that you're really passionate about sustainability and the environment. You could be a real feminist, an eco warrior. Think about the things that you're really passionate about in your real life and that you're happy to share with the world. So err on the side of caution if it comes to anything too political, because that can obviously be quite divisive. And think about what's relevant to the people that you're trying to attract. And I'll say it again here, actually, it's really important to be authentic. So I do care enormously about the planet, but I don't think I'm well informed enough or well versed enough for this to be part of my core personal brand values. Other people know a lot more, they can talk about it more effectively. So for me to stand out, I would choose values that I can confidently and authentically communicate. To me, some of the things that I feel very strongly about are flexible working and that work-life balance, diversity in the area of work that I do and my clients, and also transparency. So I always want to be completely transparent with all of my clients to build that trust and loyalty. And so a big don't here really is, don't choose things that you think will make you look too impressive. Don't kind of jump onto something that you think is quite topical or important if it isn't true to you, because you'll get called out. And if you're trying to align yourself with something that you're not that confident in, it could be quite embarrassing. It could quite have embarrassing consequences. So if you were asked a question in an interview or a work environment or a meeting and you didn't really know the answer and you gave a half-hearted response, that can actually be quite detrimental. So step 3 is tone of voice. And this is something that a lot of businesses talk about when they're creating a brand strategy. And there's some businesses that have got a very clear tone of voice. People like Innocent Smoothies, that's kind of very well known for having a very particular tone of voice. But it's really important for our personal brand as well to think about how we're communicating. So if you're really full of laughter and fun and people describe you as bubbly, cash in on that, because that's a real opportunity. But if you're more analytical and you are very factual, don't try and be bubbly, because it's not going to work for you. Find your strength and own it. And I put sort of an angry face here. Obviously, I don't recommend that anyone comes across as angry, but if you're serious and you've got a real strong opinion, don't feel like you have to smile and giggle, because that's what people would expect of you. Think about what's going to come across again in an authentic way. So we know who we are, what we find important, and how we want to come across. So now it's really thinking about, what do we want to be known for? So who are we? So we know who we are, we know what we're passionate about, but what is that thing that we want people to take away when they have any kind of interaction with us? Personally, for me, when I started my business 2.5 years ago, a huge focus was being easy to work with. And that's what I want people to really take away from any kind of interaction with me. So I worked in the advertising and marketing industry for nearly 20 years. And in that time, I've come across a lot of processes and a lot of people that make that job quite difficult. They almost take the joy out of it. And that makes people not want to work with you if you're going to make their lives even more complicated. So what I want to do is make people's lives simple. So my approach is I can help you and take some of that weight away. I can take the stress out of the process. And what I do to kind of get that across in all of my communications, whether I'm having a meeting or I'm presenting or putting a proposal together, is to assume that my clients don't know all the media jargon. I assume they don't know why, where, what, and I guide them through that process in a very simple way so that they embrace it and they enjoy it, and they're much more likely to make decisions that are going to have a good impact on their business. And the way that I inject this into my personal brand is just simply not to use that jargon. So I don't overcomplicate my language. I demonstrate in each piece of content the benefit for them. So if I'm putting social media posts out, or I've got content on my website, I'd start with how it's going to benefit my potential client, rather than talk about me and my business all the time, which is what a lot of people in the marketing industry do. So it's really simple. It's not overcomplicated. And I'm giving my potential customers a glimpse into what it's like if they're going to work with me in the future. So think about what you want to be known for. It might be that you act with integrity. It might be that you're a really great communicator, that people trust you, that you're well known for being very good at what you do. I'm sure many people that are part of the Office Management Portal are really great at multitasking, for example, or great at dealing with multiple stakeholders, because you're obviously connected to lots of people within your business, and you're probably very organised. So when you're deciding your what's, think about things that reflect you, but also align with the people that you're trying to connect with. And that brings us on very nicely to part 5, which is defining your audience. So the point of having a personal brand is to attract or connect with a certain type of person, whether they are potential employers, your industry as a whole, if you want to become a thought leader, or tap into a whole new world of work, whether that's location or a new role. So as a business owner, I've crafted my personal brand to reflect my marketing business. So my audience are essentially business owners or decision makers who might need support coming up with creative ways of connecting with their audience. But your audience could be, and again, there's no kind of, this is completely up to you. They might be other office management professionals. So you might want to grow your contacts, find your place in the community. It might be other portal members. It might be people in your organisation or partner organisations. It might be individuals in a new area or a new industry if you're looking to move physically, or if you're looking at a new role and you want to get to know people before you make that move. It could even be potential future employers. And I'm not talking about if you're actively looking for work. Obviously, that does play a big part. But a lot of people throughout their career have kind of one eye on their dream company, their dream role, where they want to be in 5 years' time. So actually, when you think about your personal brand, what you want to do is project to that. Think about where you want to be in a couple of years. If you're posting on social media or on LinkedIn or anything like that, you can be thinking about the future and how you would like to be seen by someone that you could potentially be going for an interview with in a few years' time. So that's step 5, defining your audience. Once you know who you'd like to connect with, it's also worth finding people that align to your personal brand, that are kind of influential, inspirational, or an expert in your field, and that align to your personal brand, who you can basically jump on the back of and piggyback on. So people with an existing voice are very useful because they can inspire your perspectives. They're probably quite up to date with things that are going on in your profession. They can start discussion points. If they're quite active and vocal, they might be sharing blogs or articles, and that gives you a great opportunity to curate content and participate in that conversation. And on platforms like LinkedIn, you can add your views to a blog or an article, and essentially, as I said, piggyback on the conversation. So how do you find these people? You can start with people like Hannah. So Hannah and her network of contacts are in your industry, and Hannah herself produces blogs, LinkedIn articles, social media posts on different platforms, and different topics. So again, I mean, I've worked quite closely with Hannah, so I know the variety of different things that are being sort of put out there from the Office Management Group. So it's worth having a look at businesses like this. Look at the content that they're producing, the conversations that they're having, and if they're of interest to you, you can start adding your perspective to them or sharing them within your community. And look for other leaders in the profession as well that tie into those core values. So as well as your actual day-to-day, think about if someone in the sustainability space is saying something that's really personal to you and that you really are interested in, share that as part of your personal brand story, the content that you're putting out there, and ensure that you follow people with really great visibility in that area. And as I said, flexible working is really important to me. If that's something that's important to you, there are dozens of groups and communities online that can provide support and opportunities and lots of content. So there's always somewhere to find content that's aligned to your personal brand and those values. And LinkedIn is worth spending some time there, even if it's 5 minutes a couple of times a week. Search for articles that are, again, centered back to your values. Once you've found 3 or 4 voices that resonate, that's a really great starting point. So we're not talking about doing loads of work here. It's finding a couple of people that you find really interesting and insightful. And then you start building up a picture of what you want your personal brand to include. And the next steps are actually just putting that into place. This is where we take all of that stuff that we've been talking about, all of those 5 steps. And by the way, this shouldn't be a really hard job. This should be something that you can do in 15 or 20 minutes. So jot down the answers to those questions, and then that gives you the opportunity to create your elevator pitch, which I definitely recommend that people think about. So it's basically a sentence or two that encapsulates everything you do and want to be known for, that you can clearly articulate if you were in an elevator with someone for 30 seconds to a minute. And it's very similar to what you might put on your CV or your resume's personal statement, or in a cover letter. Having that clear in your mind and the consistency of using this across multiple platforms is really invaluable here. So I'll talk a bit more about that later. And not everything we do, see and hear should be focused on digital. So I am sort of getting a bit digital centric here, but as we move back into the office and in-person networking with the office management events, there are multiple ways to engage in real life. And there's no denying that online platforms have become increasingly important in the world of work, especially obviously as a lot of the UK and the world is going to embrace hybrid working. It's really important for recruitment, as we all know, because it's the main form of job posting now. So if you are sort of thinking about that next role, that's good to bear in mind. Start with that digital. And obviously, we all know one of the first things we do when we're set to meet someone new, whether it's in a professional context or personal, is look them up. So this is a real sort of great starting point if you are putting yourself out there from a recruitment point of view. But what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about this personal brand online before talking about how there's offline opportunities as well, because that's equally as important. So digital, from a professional point of view, there is one main platform. I've mentioned it already. I really like it actually, and it's LinkedIn. So I don't know whether any of you attended my LinkedIn session a couple of months ago, but it's actually still on the Office Management Group YouTube page. So it's worth having a quick look at. It's only about 20 minutes long. But it's what I kind of covered quite a bit in that is the fact that it is one of the most important social media platforms for communicating with customers as a business owner or as a professional individual. Because there's been a few changes recently. So one is, over the last 18 months, the platform's softened quite a lot. It used to be thought of as a very corporate professional entity. Everyone's headshots were very similar, very sort of standard and formal. But like the rest of the world, it's become more open to real life now, more balance. There's a lot of content that reflects people's real lives as well as their working lives, and both have kind of blended. It's a much more welcoming platform for that kind of conversation, and people expect it. So people have actually used to seeing the extension of their colleagues and their peers' lives. There's a lot of debate on the platform, there's a lot of conversation, and it's very diverse in terms of different businesses that are on there and the types of people that are really seeing success. So it's a really great place to start when you're thinking about your personal brand online. And again, I covered this in my last session, so it is worth having a quick look at if you sort of haven't updated your LinkedIn recently. But updating your profile is vital because it's a real reflection of your mindset, your work ethic, and how present you are in your profession. And it gives you the chance to show how you're performing in your current role, your goals for the future. Again, people's introduction, their profile text, there's a real opportunity to be a bit more you. So think about those values and think about how you want to sort of write that copy to make sure it best reflects you. Profile picture wise, I mean, if you had your photo taken 10 years ago in a previous role or something similar, and then you pop up on Zoom looking quite normal, people might not recognise you. And when you go back to work and you're networking in person, this could also be the case. Like, it's there's a real opportunity to update imagery and make it a bit more sort of resonate with a more modern working world. So because I do a lot online for my business, so I've got my website and my social media channels, I actually have an arrangement with a brand photographer. So every quarter we have some refreshed photos taken that reflect me doing my work with my customers in my local area. And it's great because from a visual point of view, it's a real asset for me to update my social media regularly. But even investing in a couple of headshots or getting someone to take some really nice photos of you is a real opportunity, because obviously our smartphones now have got fantastic cameras, and having that consistency across all platforms. So on your work intranet, on your LinkedIn profile, once you start building up this personal brand and you have consistent imagery, people come to recognize you and they're going to take more notice of you if they see your content appearing. And as I say, it doesn't have to be formal headshots anymore. If you're on a weekend away somewhere and there's a kind of cool city in the background and you're wearing a cool outfit, get someone to take a really nice couple of photos of you and that capture who you are and the essence of who you are. And they don't need to be bikini shots, you know, sunglasses, that kind of thing. Be confident and feel confident if you were doing your work, but actually make sure that the images reflect a bit of your personality so that when people meet you in real life, it doesn't come as a big shock. So as I say, there's lots of tips in that LinkedIn session that's on the YouTube channel, but obviously if you've got any questions on that, you can send me a message on Slack. Something else that's really useful for building up this personal brand and this really authentic profile is to ask for recommendations on LinkedIn as well. So if you were a business, you would ask people to leave you a Google review or a Facebook review or write a TripAdvisor review. On LinkedIn, the opportunity is to ask your colleagues, peers and connections to leave you a review or to say in what area you really excel. And these are really important because if people are intrigued by your profile, if they're looking at your CV or if they just are kind of on the scout to look for new contacts, seeing what other people have said about you is invaluable. And I mean, personally, when I worked for a bigger company, it was always a bit embarrassing if it popped up as a notification that someone had left you a recommendation, but you can switch that off. And building it up in the background is a really great way of giving someone more context on who you are and what other people think about you. So I definitely recommend asking your network to leave you a recommendation and build up a nice selection of feedback. And in terms of content and how this increases your visibility, LinkedIn is a great way to comment on topics and things that are already out there, but you don't necessarily need to feel pressure to create content. So it's really refreshing. It's a big time saver. If you're using Facebook or other platforms, you're basically held to the algorithm. You need to be active, you need to be responsive, you need to be creating all new different types of content. But on LinkedIn, it's really valuable, although it is valuable to create the posts, especially if you've got like a story to tell or an update. But there's a real big opportunity to become visible by commenting on posts and spending, as I said, 5 minutes a few times a week, curating content that's relevant to your values and your personal brand. So if you see a story or an article that strikes you and aligns with your values, comment on it, share it. As I say, unlike the other social media channels, LinkedIn doesn't have a restrictive algorithm yet. Obviously, this could change. So make the most of it by popping up on the feed of your connections and their connections. And that's the real beauty. So as I say, go back to the LinkedIn webinar from before to see how to build up those connections. But once you've got connections, you can then be seen by your connections second and third. So that means there's a big, big audience that's available for you to increase your visibility. So having that great profile, having a really nice consistent profile picture, being visible, commenting and active can really increase your visibility. So that's a bit more about LinkedIn, but actually much of it can be used all over the web. So this elevator pitch that I think it's definitely worth thinking about how you encapsulate everything that you stand for. That can be used anywhere online. So if you have a bio on your intranet or CRM system, your profile at networking events, if you're given any collateral to add some text to, that's a really great opportunity. And having that consistency across every touch point will really ensure that there's more impact and that people get to understand who you are and what you're about. That's kind of the digital side of things. I'm just going to talk a bit about not digital. So obviously digital footprint is hugely important, especially at the moment. It still will be going forward. But this all should feed through into how we conduct ourselves in real life. And by that I mean your passions, your values, your tone of voice, and that elevator pitch should all come across when we're meeting people face to face. So how can we utilise our personal brand in different scenarios? Firstly, if we're networking, whether it's a formal networking or informal events, how we come across in that initial interaction can really have a big impact on how people perceive us from then on. For example, if you were attending one of the office management events, you may be meeting each other for the first time, or it might be that you've met recently through other events and webinars. So think about who you're going to be meeting and what you would like from them and the event as a whole. So are you intending on meeting new professional friends who you can build a rapport with and a friendship and a community over time? And if that's the case, soften that interaction, ask them lots of questions, find that sort of point that you've both got shared values, and find people that reflect your tone of voice as well, that you kind of feel that you'd want to develop a relationship with. If the networking is more formal and you have a clear goal, which could be getting a new job, bringing in a new service provider, making more connections that are going to lead to business, make sure that you've read up on the topics being discussed, if there's any themes or talking points, and have some interesting insight about their role, their business, their industry to share, so that you come across as someone that really kind of pays attention to that. And if you decide you want to focus on a particular value and grow your knowledge and interest in this area, you could attend some specific networking events that are around that and will enable you to then gather important insights that will help you create your own tone of voice in that area. So then when you're meeting people on a broader note, you've got a lot to add to that. And the same goes for meetings here. So if you're meeting a potential service provider, a client, a customer, make sure you've done your research. Be you, make sure that you definitely sort of reflect your tone of voice, but make sure that you've got a bit of an idea about what they might be like as well, and come up with some really sort of relevant and thoughtful questions that reflect your personality and align to what you want to get out of that scenario. And if you show a genuine interest in someone and demonstrate that you've made an effort, obviously their initial perception of you is going to be positive, they'll be drawn to you, and they'll want to know more. So above and beyond meetings and networking, there's also a lot of opportunities to extend your visibility and finesse your personal brand, and that can really help your career. So one example, and this is very sort of relevant, is an awards. Obviously, there's the Office Management Awards next week, which I know everybody's very excited about. So if you have a solid elevator pitch and you've added your strengths, your achievements, I mean, in anyone's career, I always recommend keeping a kind of Google Doc or a spreadsheet somewhere and just add in the great things that you've done, because then when it comes to award entry time, you've got everything that you've achieved right there. If you've already got this elevator pitch, half your work's done on the award entry. And that confidence, the preparation, it will make you really stand out as someone who is a core part of the industry and has always got one eye on the next thing. And this could also be the case if you would like to be an interview guest, if you are interested in writing a blog for somebody or an article, or even appearing in a podcast episode. If you curate your personal brand and have a definite interest in certain areas, articulate your skill set in a very clear way, you could be approached to be a thought leader or a contributor, which enables you to be projected into a whole new space to a wider audience. So yeah, there's a real kind of value in being prepared and having that kind of personal brand in place. And if you're not invited, ask people. So that, again, is really kind of putting you out there. If you, I mean, we've all got hundreds of connections on LinkedIn, if not thousands. Tap into the ones that are aligned to your values, that kind of, you know, can serve you and give you a real opportunity. And then ask your contacts if there's any opportunity to be a thought leader in this particular area, to write an article or guest blog with them and get visible, basically. So people are always looking for new content opportunities. And if you're really strong in what you're putting out there, you can become part of that content. So to recap, there's 5 key steps to creating and defining your personal brand. As I said, none of this should take very long, because you know it, like we all know who we are, what are our values, what do we feel really passionate about, what is our tone of voice, how do we come across, and how would we like to come across, and what do you want to be known for? And that's kind of where it really could change course. And then who are you trying to engage with? Who's your audience? From that, create your elevator pitch. As I said, if you would like to run them past me, feel free to drop me a note on Slack with a couple of sentences and I can give you some pointers, because once you've got it, you can extend it off into the different areas as is relevant. So yeah, if you've got 15 minutes this week, do it while you remember. Jot down the answers to these 5 questions and then craft a rough elevator pitch. It's the first step. It might not be perfect, but you will learn where you want to go and how you might tweak it in order to kind of extend yourself, reach out to your ideal connections in an effective way and an engaging way. So yeah, so feel free to send me anything that you put together. And if anyone's got any questions, I'll stop sharing and then I'll be happy to answer them for you.